Have you ever driven down a lonely road late at night, feeling like you're the only person for miles? What if you weren't? Tonight, we're delving into three terrifying tales from the darkest corners of America's highways, stories that will make you think twice before getting behind the wheel after dark. These are the chilling encounters that blur the line between the living and the dead, where the asphalt holds secrets and the shadows hide more than just the night. So, turn down the lights, lock your doors, and prepare yourself. The road ahead is long and filled with terror. Our first story takes us to Route 47, a desolate highway notorious for its fatal accidents and unsettling ghost sightings. It was 2:13 in the morning when Kyle was driving home. He'd just finished a long shift at work and was exhausted, his mind numb to the thick fog that was slowly swallowing his car. The world outside was a gray, silent blur. Suddenly, his radio, which had been playing softly, began to crackle. The music dissolved into static, then faint, indecipherable whispers, and then a voice cut through the noise, clear and chilling. It was a woman's voice, soft, yet trembling with fear. "Don't look back." Kyle froze, his hands gripping the steering wheel. The voice felt like it was right next to his ear. Against his better judgment, against every instinct screaming at him not to, his eyes flickered to the rearview mirror, and his heart stopped. In the back seat, a face stared back at him. It was pale, almost translucent, framed by dark, matted hair. A woman soaked in what looked like blood, her eyes wide and fixed directly on his. A scream lodged in his throat. He slammed on the brakes, the tires shrieking against the wet pavement as the car skidded to a halt. Without thinking, he threw his door open and scrambled out into the foggy darkness, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He stumbled to the back of the car and yanked the rear door open. But there was nothing. The back seat was empty. No woman, no blood, just the faint metallic smell of burnt rubber from his tires. And another scent, sweet and out of place. Roses. Shaking, his mind racing, Kyle jumped back into the driver's seat and sped away, not daring to look in the mirror again. He didn't slow down until he saw the bright, welcoming lights of a gas station. He pulled in, desperate for the sight of another human being. The attendant, an older man, came out to greet him, but his friendly smile faded as he got closer to the car. He went pale. "Buddy," the man said slowly, his voice low, "you got blood all over your back seat." Kyle's blood ran cold. He turned and looked, and there it was. Dark red smears staining the fabric of the seat. And lying perfectly in the center, a single, long strand of black hair. The locals in that area all know the story. They say she was a bride who died in a horrific car crash on that very stretch of road, 20 years ago to the day. And sometimes, when the fog is thick, she's still out there, waiting for a ride home. Next, we travel to the vast, empty deserts of Arizona. In 2018, a long-haul trucker named Raymond was making his way through the state's barren landscape around midnight. The road was a straight, black ribbon stretching into infinity, the only light coming from his headlights. Up ahead, he saw an old, beat-up white van. It was driving erratically, going much slower than the speed limit. As he got closer, Raymond noticed something strange. The van had no license plate, and its taillights weren't working. Annoyed and a little unnerved, he honked his massive air horn, expecting the driver to speed up or pull over. But the van continued at the same crawling pace. Fed up, Raymond decided to overtake it. He pulled into the opposite lane, the roar of his engine filling the quiet desert. As he drew parallel to the van, he glanced over, ready to give the driver a piece of his mind. But what he saw made him forget how to breathe. There was nobody driving. The driver's seat was empty. No hands were on the wheel. The van was steering itself down the dark highway. His eyes darted to the passenger side, and he saw it. A dark, featureless shadow. A humanoid shape sitting perfectly still in the seat. Pure panic seized him. Raymond slammed his foot on the accelerator, his truck roaring past the phantom vehicle. He didn't look back until he was a few miles down the road. He thought he was safe. But then, a pair of headlights appeared in his rearview mirror. It was the same white van, and it was closing in fast. It was right on his tail, tailgating him aggressively at a speed that seemed impossible for such an old vehicle. Raymond's heart hammered against his ribs. He swerved, trying to shake it, but the van mirrored his every move. In a final desperate attempt to escape, he wrenched the wheel, sending his truck skidding off the road and into the sandy shoulder, nearly crashing. He came to a dusty, jarring stop and looked up, expecting the van to be right there. But it was gone. The highway was empty. The only sound was the ticking of his cooling engine. The next morning, when state troopers investigated the scene, they found Raymond's tire marks leading off the road. But they also found another set of tracks, the tracks from the van. They followed them, and they led to nowhere, ending abruptly at the edge of a steep cliff. Far below, half buried in the sand, was the wreckage of an old white van, rusted and completely destroyed. After a difficult recovery, the license plate was traced. It belonged to a family that had vanished without a trace in that same desert back in 1999. Our final story happens on the legendary Highway 66, on a night when the sky opened up and the rain came down in sheets. A woman named Julia was driving, the wipers struggling to keep the windshield clear. Through the downpour, she saw a figure standing under a flickering streetlight. It was a man, thumb raised, completely drenched and shivering in the cold. He was just a silhouette in the rain. Julia was hesitant, but her pity won over her fear. She pulled over. The man climbed into the passenger seat, water dripping from his old army jacket onto the floor mat. He offered a faint, tired smile. "Thank you, ma'am," he said, his voice raspy. "I just need to get to the next town." They drove on in an uncomfortable silence, the only sounds being the drumming of the rain and the rhythmic swoosh of the wipers. The minutes ticked by. 15 minutes later, Julia, wanting to break the silence, turned to ask him a question about where to drop him off, but she stopped mid-sentence. The passenger seat was empty. He was gone. There had been no sound, no click of a door opening, no gust of wind. He had simply vanished. An eerie, bone-deep chill filled the car, a cold that had nothing to do with the weather outside. Julia screeched to a halt, her heart racing so fast she felt it might burst. She got out of the car, her hands shaking as she checked the passenger door. It was still locked from the inside. Terrified and confused, she drove the rest of the way to the next town in a daze. She went straight to the police station, her story tumbling out in a panicked rush. The officers listened patiently, their expressions unreadable. When she finished, they didn't laugh or call her crazy. They just stared. One of the officers quietly stood up and pointed to a framed photograph on the wall. It was a memorial photo of a young man in an army uniform. It was the hitchhiker. "Ma'am," the officer said softly, his voice full of a strange sympathy. "That man died on this highway 10 years ago. A hit and run. We still get reports about him, every time it rains." From phantom passengers to self-driving ghost vans, these stories remind us that some journeys don't end with death, and some spirits are forever bound to the roads they once traveled. The next time you're on a late-night drive and see a strange light in your mirror or a lonely figure by the roadside, you might just be a part of the next highway horror story. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed these stories, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next dive into the unknown. Stay safe out there.